Three provinces experienced a tough weekend with that snowstorm that you've just seen there, trapping some commuters along the N3 towards Kwazulu Natal. Trucks were also caught up in the storm, delaying their journeys. Many of the major routes in Kwazulu Natal, especially the N3 and N11, were closed. The situation, of course, has since improved and the roads have reopened again. But to get a sense of how the road freight industry was impacted, we've invited Gavin, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Road Freight Association. Gavin, thank you for joining us on Point. What are your members have been saying to you, particularly about this past weekend? How many of them, of these, I think the gentleman on the story mentioned about 1,800 vehicles that were trapped. Of those, how many of your trucks members were part of that?
Good afternoon, Liabo, and good afternoon to all the viewers. I think we'd like the weather department not to forecast snow again for a while. Yes, it has had an impact on freight movement. We're at about 54 hours now that some of the trucks haven't been able to move, which is a problem, obviously. The problem isn't so much getting those goods to where they need to go. Our concern is with the drivers, because some of those drivers weren't prepared, whether either through them not getting the message, or the operators, their controllers not telling them what was happening, or whether they just couldn't get to anything to make themselves safer. So at this stage, we've still got about 700 odd trucks where we're looking for drivers. We don't know where the drivers are. They're probably sheltering somewhere. So we've got teams out looking for drivers, and they're spaced around and across the N3 from Rhiannon all the way down to Moy River. We have organized security so that those trucks don't get vandalized or looted, because that's always a problem, unfortunately. But we're slowly finding the drivers. So we've got some trucks that are still stuck there, not moving. That is why the authorities are saying, even though parts of the N3 are open, there are still some areas where there are still a lot of stationary vehicles and trucks and some buses standing. So at this stage, we're trying to find those last drivers. We're trying to get everything moving again. 54 hours of delay will, at this stage, we haven't worked out what the cost will be, because we're hoping that most of those deliveries are not going to be penalized. This wasn't as if it was a strike or a driver that created an issue, but we'll probably find out a lot more in terms of the cost heading towards the end of the week. Yeah,
but tell us what exactly happens in the instances of trucks not arriving to ports in time. You do mention the issue of penalization, but are the ports providing leeway in those instances so that goods are set for export and can get on board on time?
Well, there are a number of role players in that, Liabo, and that's always the difficulty. So, the port might provide some leeway and say, well, if you come a day or two later, that's okay with us. But of course, a port has a ship calling, and those containers need to get onto a ship. And the shipping lines are the ones who will decide whether they're going to sail on the day or whether they are prepared to delay their sailing. And again, it depends on the number of containers that were destined for a specific ship that might have been in the harbour. So that there's a bit of juggling happening there. We're hoping that if some ships do sail without the containers, that there will be a relief sailing coming to get those containers. But that's the difficulty. When you have international logistics chains, you have to try and meet everybody's times along that route.
Yeah. At the end of the day, there's also the supply value chain that we have to consider, particularly at the retail level. Do you expect any particular sectors that could be hit hard? Because the N3 is quite a major route that transports a lot of goods, particularly for retail purposes. What's your expectation in this regard?
We are not expecting any major issues because the distribution centres are full. So a fair amount of those trucks would have been heading to distribution centres. As I say, towards the end of the week, we'll have a better idea, because then we would have had far better communication back from what sort of commodities were delayed.
Yeah. Just before I let you go, Gavin, there's been a lot of criticism about the response time of disasters in the country. What's your sentiments with regard to that? Do you think there could have been anything? Of course, no one could have predicted that these, although there were warnings, but I mean, we did not think that the severity of the matter of the snow could be this much. But do you think that the response time and the disaster management could have been better?
Liabo, there's always room for improvement. Yes, it could have been better, but remember, when you have snow and ice on the roads, that actually slows down the reaction time that people can get to you. So I think what we need to do is we need to sit back and learn from this. We need to put in place those sorts of pieces of equipment that are needed to deal with this sort of snow and ice. We can learn from this. Yeah, we could have done better, but I think under the situation, under the circumstances, I think we must thank the emergency services for what they did.
Gavin, thank you so much for your time on Point. I've been speaking to Gavin Kelly. He's the CEO of the Road Freight Association. They're also trying to find those drivers of the 700 trucks that have set there, and hopefully they'll be able to find them still in a safe manner.